People get this very confused. You can ask for respect, but you can't make people respect you. It's kind of shocking, right? Now, we've all tried to make other people be who we want them to be and behave how we want them to behave and give us what we expect of them. It's normal to want that. But if the other person is not inclined, it's exhausting to try to make them comply. Some people are aligned with us and they're going to cooperate with us anyway. It's the ones who are not aligned with us where everything gets jammed up. Because these people are not interested in our boundaries. They're interested in what they want. And it's we who are getting confused, thinking that we have made some kind of agreement with them, when really we have two people who want different things. And because this is the case, it's you who has to respect your boundaries. It's you who has to stand up for what you need, even when you have to walk away to get it. Thinking we can make other people be who we demand is part of the same thing that makes boundaries hard for us in the first place. It's easy to think that it's someone else's job, rather than our own job, to have boundaries and to stand up for them. And the sooner you recognize this, the sooner that you can get free of this thought prison, that if you just yell loud enough, they will drop whatever they were trying to do, and they will now want what you want. And if you have to fight about it, you're probably not aligned. This is painful to face, and what we can't face honestly tends to confuse us, right? So how did we get like this? Well, if you grew up with abuse and neglect and you've only started healing, you might be somewhat new at doing this boundary thing. And it will seem like the problem is other people. All problems look like they come from other people. And yes, sometimes the problem really is coming from the other person. For example, when they attack another person or violate them or steal from them. But a lot of the anger and frustration that you might go through around boundaries is really caused by a misunderstanding about what a boundary is. I used to think I thought it was just like nonsense in the past. And I remember when I was first recovering and I was going to these 12-step meetings for families of alcoholics and people were talking about boundaries, I was thinking, what prissy girls these are. How perfectionist of them. I just thought boundaries was psychobabble. And it's hard for me to remember why I would have thought so then, but that's how I read it. I don't know what I thought. I didn't have a level of awareness that made me see what does boundaried behavior look like and what does it look like when they aren't there, which is actually quite limiting. When there are no boundaries, you're not really safe to go forward into a situation. So I guess on one level, I did know what it was, but it was a matter of definition. Now, a lot of people ask me, how can they get loved ones to better honor their boundaries? How to get them to be more sensitive about their CPTSD symptoms and, care about them and help them with those. It's totally normal and appropriate to want that kind of support and respect. But I'm going to say something that's very tough love here. You can ask someone to understand you and your needs, and you can even ask them to help you avoid getting triggered, but they're not obliged to do any of it. That doesn't mean they don't care about you, and it doesn't mean they don't support you. In fact, when they give you space to notice your own trauma reactions and to work on those inside, it might be the best, most loving, supportive thing that they can do. Now, you've probably been told you have a right to get respect around your boundaries. I have a right to that. Even when your boundaries are extreme, even when you're acting out of that hurt place inside. And I don't actually think that boundaries are a right, technically. It doesn't really work that way. There are very few rights, really. It's a matter of respect. So it's your right to ask for what you want, for what you think would be helpful when something is hard for you. But trying to force other people to help you manage your trauma reactions isn't fair. And it isn't going to work. And that's not what respect is. Respect is not when people were forced to do what you required, right? What you said you wanted. In fact, trying to make somebody do something that they don't want to do is called control. And everyone in our lives has the right not to be controlled by us. You have the right not to be controlled by others. But you have the right to ask. You have the right not to spend time with that person, and this is crucial. That's where your right is. You have a right to separate from something. You have a right to get away from something that's destructive to you. But they have the right to be themselves. Now, someone who cares about you might be willing to change the way they do things if you ask them, but they might not. And PTSD thinking will tell you that someone you love, who you're attached to, who's doing something that bothers you, owes it to you to change. But I want to teach you why in any situation where you're not actually restrained, these people aren't actually doing anything to you. They're being themselves, which you may not like. You don't like them, but they're not actually preventing your healing because you could get away. Now, right now you're thinking, wait, what? But that's what I'm saying. When people do their own thing and give you space to work out your own triggers and learn to calm your own symptoms, you then have an opportunity to learn the only thing that really works or can be sustained, and that is self-regulation. Now, when you're regulated, you have choices. One of your choices is, if you don't like what someone's doing, is to not be around that person. And I mean, I don't like people getting drunk. I'm not really comfortable around that. I've had so much of that in my life. Now, maybe I can not be around people drinking, right? That's my right. I can not be around them. And that means like not going to the restaurant where it is permitted, not trying to shut the restaurant down, not try to go to every table and go, you guys, this really bothers me. I know I don't know you, but could you not drink here, right? Do you see the point that I'm illustrating? When I always talk about this, about respect and boundaries, like not everybody is going to respect you as a person. Not everybody is going to care even this much about your boundaries. Your boundaries are something that you create because that means what you won't put up with, which means you remove yourself. And I know there are a few situations where you can't remove yourself. And there the question of, do you have a right? Do you have a right to be able to work in a quiet space when you work in an office? I don't know. That would be a matter for a lawyer. But for personal interactions, I'm just telling you that when you keep working on trying to force people to be how you want them to be, it leads to distance, it leads to them pushing you away, it leads to ill will, and it doesn't lead to you getting what you want. I think a lot of the thing that's going on when we're trying to force people to be a certain way is we're trying to compensate for a little bit of magical thinking that we had going into that friendship or romantic relationship with that person, where we could instantly sort of go, they would be, if they were just like 15% better in the way that I would like them to be, they would be the perfect friend for me. And then we try to see the best in them. And when they fall short, we're like, come on, I was expecting you to be, up here for me. If you have that trait, and I think we've all had it in some situations, it doesn't lead to anything good. In the end, it's actually something very self-focused. We're not really seeing the other person. When your brain is regulated, you might get to see more clearly that someone is not doing anything wrong. Or you might see that they're a total jerk, or they're a bully, or that they drink too much. And maybe you asked them to change once or twice. If you ask them 3 times and they still don't change, well, what else are you going to do? To ask any more is an attempt to control them. And even if you succeed at making them do something, it's not going to bring that harmony and that good feeling of being supported and connected that we all crave. So at that point, if change isn't going to happen, you either let go of your grievance or you let the relationship go. Because if you push and nag and repeat your demand that they change, it will suck the soul out of you and everybody in earshot. Now, it's a beautiful idea that if someone else would change, we'd be okay. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people, those of us who have, trauma wounds, and they're all over the comments section. You'll find them instantly, where they're like, I don't have to change, the world needs to change. Whenever I make videos about changing yourself, and this one will be one of them, they'll go, I'm not the one who causes all the problems in the world. Society needs to be more this way. And it's what I think of that is that it's an error of scope. It's somebody who's perhaps very young and doesn't realize that nobody can actually turn a dial on the world and make it more this way. It's a thought, it's a discussion thing, it's something that you could vote about, but even when you do, even when you have, candidates who are like, oh, we're totally gonna change the world in this way, I'm just telling you from my age, my vantage point at this age, they they pretty much can't. It's very difficult to change human nature or the whole culture or something, not without force. But even when you can get someone to strike that bargain with you to try to fix you by being the person you want them to be, you only put your trauma wounds into a little sealed chamber. Nothing changes. If you succeed in getting somebody to basically codependently be like, oh, honey, don't get mad. Oh, I'll turn off the water right now since it's too loud for you. Oh, if you have somebody do that, I think it's very unlikely that your character is going to develop, that your healing is going to proceed. I think mainly your relationship is going to turn sour. And what if it was a good one? So there's no gain there. What prompts our healing is usually friction, problems. We get problems and we have to sort of get up on our toes to see a way through them. So people do their thing around us and we get triggered. It's impossible to control or avoid getting triggered all the time. And that's why so many people with childhood trauma end up pulling away, retreating, getting isolated and far away from everybody. Now, isolation might prevent triggers, but it also prevents fulfillment and a whole lot of other things. So our challenge is to stay away from those who would abuse us, and with everyone else, be at peace with people as they are. Peace with other people comes from accepting and knowing that healing happens in here. It happens in here. Other people living their lives, they matter. Their behavior matters, but they don't have the power to heal us or to make us stop having triggers. Even if they were willing to try, they couldn't do it. Now, have you been through this experience before where you're trying to help someone and they just won't change? Or when someone tries to help you and you can feel that their suggestions keep hitting you like a criticism, it's because they are. When we try to tell somebody how they need to be, it's a criticism, and there's a time when it's appropriate. I have young adult kids, and especially while they were teenagers, and occasionally now I go, listen, there's something that you're doing that you're going to need to change, and the only reason I have a right to it is if they live in my house or they're financially dependent on me. And then after that, I don't have a right to tell adults how they have to be. It's kind of weird because, they used to be my little babies and they were just like practically part of my body. They were part of my body initially. So now they're autonomous human beings and I have to let them work out their own problems. So, and I've been talking to one of my kids about this, about how you don't have to go into avoidance if you know how to set boundaries. And boundaries are really hard. I don't think there's a very clear cultural idea about what they are. And we, in some cases, rightly get anxious about setting boundaries because some people, especially if they're emotionally immature or narcissistic, they will lash out if you set a boundary. That's one of the litmus tests. It's set a boundary, what do they do? I don't recommend testing people, but I've definitely had that experience where some people, they take it really badly. And it's a confusing situation because it's also possible sometimes, setting boundaries, sometimes we're capable of sort of twisting that as well as a means to control people. So if somebody feels controlled, it doesn't mean they're the bad guy. It just means people feel the way they feel. Everybody's being themselves. Somebody's like, I really want you to be quieter at night. And the other person's like, I really need to walk around and eat my dinner late at night when I get home from work. So everybody's just being themselves, and we have to work it out and find a happy medium. We get into power plays. If we have trauma wounds about never being listened to, we can be very intense about, oh, you're not listening to me. I need you to change your behavior. So it's around this desire for somebody to change an important request, a valid request, where it can get very confusing because we're never, I won't speak for all of you, but I'm never 100% sure that my requests are valid. I have to use, I'm a big fan of ancient philosophy and theology to help me understand what are some principles I can follow so that when I just don't even know, who's right here? What's the right action for me to take? And is it my role to tell somebody else they have to change? I can refer to something much older than myself that people have spent centuries or millennia kind of working out. Hey, I've got a quick invite for you. I made a free daily practice course that shows you 2 simple techniques to calm the storm when you're triggered inside. It's short, it's powerful, and it helps you feel clearer, more focused, and more at ease, fast. click the second link in the description section below, or use the QR code right there, and you can start your course right away. I think it's a nice thing when you start reading old philosophy and theology. People have not changed that much. And it's kind of reassuring. And one of the lessons I've taken from that is that everybody is part bad and part good. Nobody can really perfect themselves. It's good to try, but nobody ever makes it. We always have this kind of, aspect of ourselves that is, not the good side and is selfish and greedy and sometimes dishonest. And we all have that kind of, it's in there. And we're all at different places of getting the ratio right on that, of our better nature to be able to manage it. So controlling people isn't good, and being inconsiderate of people isn't good. So we're in a battle of wills when somebody's being inconsiderate of what somebody wants and somebody's trying to control. But I just think that the relationship that results out of trying to control as a way of dealing with it might not even be a relationship worth having. If you can't relax and be yourself and be aligned with somebody, it's going to be stressful and a lot of work. And there are times when we have to be that because we're caring for somebody who's ill. And sometimes when people are very ill, they're not at their best. Or we married somebody and took a vow and we're staying with them no matter what. Or we want to leave, but we can't because money, or their children, and they're just pushing us to our very last nerve. And we cannot let them, get into trouble or danger. We have to force the control on them. There are times, I totally get that. But operating out of that place, the thing is, when you succeed in getting somebody to be who you want them to be, you don't get that fulfillment and that delight that somebody turns out to be someone who makes you feel great, who is right there with you with the chair that you need to sit down on at the right moment, who anticipates that you had a hard day and is right there at home waiting for you. Like, these are the sweet things in life when people they have the space to care about you of their own volition. And people are different. Now, a lot of us, if we have anxious attachment, we end up with avoidant types, or at least slightly avoidant. And to have peace in that type of a dynamic, there has to be a little bit of meeting in the middle. There has to be meeting in the middle. And that means each person has to sacrifice a little bit about what they really wanted the dynamic to be. And they have to be a little bit giving in that respect. So for me as the anxious person, if I'm not getting, the full attention I want, I need to be a little bit giving and be like, it's okay. We'll hang out later. I have plenty of things I can do. It's not usually that complicated. But obviously, things that are just like the little quirks of a personality, like almost everything in our personality, if taken to the extreme, could be quite evil. So somebody who just abandons people in need, a drowning person, a child, that is evil. And so we have to exercise our perception and our moral judgment. Most of the times, childhood trauma will damage these two things. So we're recovering those two things. So we have a point of reference to ask ourselves, am I criticizing this person in front of me because of how they compare to the imaginary version of them that I hold in my mind with my wishful thinking? Or is there something I need to speak out about and ask for what I want? And am I prepared to accept even if they can't really come through on that? And sometimes love means you can hang out, you can let people be themselves. Sometimes self-preservation means you go. Now, have you ever been on the other side where somebody's trying to help you and is trying to get you to change? And they think they're helping you, but they're trying to make you change. Because this happens all the time. This could happen when you read a self-help book, or you see a therapist, or you ask a friend for advice. And it happens when you watch my videos, right? I can't change you. I can't change you, and neither can anyone else. Maybe I can influence you, though, but only if you want to learn from me. And then, even only if the obstacles you carry around learning and listening to somebody like me don't get in the way. So I'm not saying everything is a construct of our minds or of our will. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm very practical. People influence each other deeply for good and for evil. And this is where I suggest you put your focus on choosing carefully who will influence you and thinking carefully about how much you can expect to influence other people. How much can you expect to influence them? So when I first learned my daily practice techniques that saved my life, I flew home to my family of origin. I'm like, everybody, I've learned this thing. We've all got to do it. My mother had just died then, and we were all grieving. And there's a lot of alcoholism in my family. And anybody who's not an alcoholic is totally messed up from the alcoholism, right? So everybody was messed up and very sad. And I was like, I've got, this thing has totally lifted my spirits. I want to share it with everybody. It's for families of alcoholics. And God knows that's what we are. And I was like, here. I was handing out pens and paper, and it drove them nuts. And none of them did it. And they didn't like it. And they thought I was foolish. And I was angry at the time. And I left in a huff. But here's the thing, I was trying to force on them. I was trying to force my experience on them. My intentions were entirely good, but I didn't understand you can't really make people change or want to change in the way that you do. Like everybody was kind of doing it their own way. When I put the very same thing that I was trying to teach them in 1994, I put it on YouTube in 2017, guess what? Like hundreds of people were very interested. It wasn't force. I can't force people on YouTube. I can just kind of say, well, here's what worked for me. Here's why I think it did. Here's how to do it. And then I let people decide if they want it or not. I just hit these comments. I was looking at comments today, and somebody was like really angry at me that my video was 25 minutes. And I get so tempted in these moments to be like, joke about it and be like, I know you contracted me and paid me $10,000 to make it 10 minutes and I screwed up, so I'll give you your money back. I don't know. The video is what it is. I'm sort of talking about something, and videos come in all lengths. And I suppose like the more we start scrolling through shorts and reels and everything, we're like, oh, 25 minutes. But yeah, a lot of people really like the longer form. Many people say, couldn't you go to 3 hours? And I'm like, well, I could, but I'd have to smash a lot of videos together. So let's talk about what's realistic for you to expect from other people. All right, people, you're watching this, you can't expect to control how I make videos. People also tell me, like, you shouldn't use that word. And it's just like, oh, I don't know. I forget what it is. It's like all different things. And occasionally maybe they have a point like, oh, that's not really fair to people, but it's often just some preference they have. Don't use that word. And boy, if anything makes me feel very sure that I want to use the word, it's like people telling me I can't. And I'm not really a rebellious person, but I believe very deeply. I'll tell you, I'm a religious person. I believe that every person is made in the image of God. And if you actually try to like control their ability to be themselves and express themselves, you're actually, damaging creation. You're interfering with something that's not for you to do. But it's confusing, right? Because we need to help people when they're down and out. We need to help children. In our close relationships with people, we have a role to play in saying, your behavior is really preventing me from sleeping, or your drinking is destroying our marriage, or, we do affect each other. So I'm trying to talk about that fine line. What is realistic for you to expect from other people? They can provide a calm, safe environment, perhaps. Not everyone can do that. You shouldn't expect it from people who can't and don't. And they can encourage us when we're freaked out to get out our tools and deal with the disturbance within. That's really what a loving response is. If I'm freaked out, it's like, seems like you're getting dysregulated. Did you want to go right and meditate? So for me, the tools they're a pen and paper and a chair. But you'll be amazed when you learn to regulate your trauma symptoms, the overreactions, the unreasonableness, the demands that we put on other people, because it seems like, all I need, the only thing missing in my life is for somebody else to change themselves. You'll be amazed how much easier it is for other people to love you when that pressure is like when you release it, when your whole personality is not just always like leaning towards what you want, and you're kind of just hanging out present, and it's very relaxing. It's a nice feeling. So how can you do that? When you're in the place where you want to make a demand on someone, it usually means it's time to do what I call stop and drop. Stop the action that's escalating conflict and drop into a chair where you can start writing your fears and resentments. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a free course. It is the second link down in the description section. You can always go there and sign up for it. I encourage you to do it. It's short, it's free. You'll learn this thing. And once you're using my techniques, all my videos are going to make so much more sense. And I want to say that very clearly. The videos is where I talk about what it's like to not be doing so well and what it's like to feel healed, but how to actually do it is in the link. So, and I have other courses too, but that one's free. It's a great place to start. Now, when you get relief from the fearful and resentful thoughts, things get clearer. The fire burns off and the truth is there. It's cool to the touch, the stuff that you've been just worrying and worrying over. It's like, there it is, it calmed down. It's not your fault you were abused and neglected as a kid, but it's you and it's me. We have to be the ones who stop acting out on the trauma. And we have to learn and try things and notice our triggers when they happen if we want to calm them. So nobody can really do that for us. Now, some people will be very open to learning what you're working on and they'll support you, but probably not. And when you're yelling at them, it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So how do we do that? How do we get neutral? You'll hear me say this a lot. It helps if you don't talk about it. Yep. When you're triggered and you know it, just pause. Your thinking is getting dysregulated. And if it's anger, then by definition, it's going to feel unreasonable to other people. Are you ever perceived as unreasonable, too hard on people? I have been, and this is exactly why it's happening. I'm pretty far down the rabbit hole of thinking how they're supposed to be, and I'm angry. I'm just like, why are you letting me down? Very hard to be close to a person who's coming at you with that. So it's an argument you'd be better off not having, honestly. If you have to argue, you can argue later. Later is better when you're regulated again, when you can choose your words and not just have them fly out, like things that you didn't really mean that actually hurt, maybe irreparably. Hey, it's me, and real fast, if you're watching my videos and wondering if maybe past trauma is having an effect on your life today, I want to share with you a list of signs that what you're struggling with now might be connected with neglect or abuse in your childhood. It's good to know this because it can help you know that what's hard for you right now is normal and that healing is possible. You can download my Signs of Childhood PTSD quiz by clicking the top link in the description section below or using that QR code right there. Now, this would be crazy talk if there wasn't, in fact, a way to get regulated, but we can do that. And it starts with owning the problem and not blaming other people that we feel bad, not with our words and not in our minds, okay? And abuse is another story. Can we just take that off the table? This is just like everyday interactions, all right? So we're not in our minds just going, well, I have to be bitchy because you're so mean. And we actually have a choice about how we come to situations. If somebody you're with is that bad, I want you to get out of there. If they're abusive, if they're always unfair to you, if they, grind you down, maybe that's not a good place to be. But because you're there, I'm assuming you want it to be good. This is your life, this is your home. Or this is your family or your school or the people you hang out with, your team. Healing can really move forward when we can just recognize, I'm having a reaction. And then, and this is the hard part, resisting the urge to say a lot about how we're feeling. I know, that's not what you were taught, right? I'm going to tell you something different. You can say something like, oh dear, I'm having, one of my stress reactions. Hold on a sec while I get myself sorted out. And then don't set yourself up to insist that you get heard. Go sort yourself out. Don't wave your triggered feelings like a flag of blame. You did this to me, now fix it. Just be like, okay, I've gotten all triggered. Let me go sort myself out and we'll try again to talk about this. Because trying to get other people to deal with those, you already know it hasn't worked well. This is your new approach. This and giving yourself a little time out to write fears and resentments can work wonders to diffuse that intensity and be able to tell them something that's, this big and concise and intelligible, and they get it and they can hear you. And you believe me, you want that. It's not enough to just say how you feel. You want to be heard. And, when we're just like yelling and all over the place, the probability that they're going to really hear us goes down. So after that, whatever you need to discuss is going to be simpler and lighter and easier for another person to hear. That's a good thing when it happens. But the nicest feeling of all is knowing that whatever happens, whatever present day reaction rises up out of your childhood trauma, you're going to be able to deal with it. You'll keep your boundaries and you'll gradually open your heart to all the love and fun that life holds for you. It's time.